So it is 5. Welcome everyone, and thanks for joining. So this is the Technical Officials Information Meeting. It's the first of 2 meetings. We'll be running another quick one just before the verification meeting next week on July 8th. Joni, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. So my name is Amanda Braddock, and I'm the competition coordinator for the OWA. I'll be leading this meeting in English, but I'm also joined by Joni Gaudreau, who is our translator for the evening. And she will be clarifying details in French or answering questions asked in the chat if anything is unclear. If I'm speaking too quickly or if something is not clear, please stop me as soon as possible with just a question in the chat box. Actually, I'm going to open that now. Whoops, so that I can see it. And I think, Joni, if you don't mind, I might give you host permission so that you can admit people.
Sounds good.
All right. So for those of you who have not officiated an online meet before, if you have officiated an online meet before, a lot of this is going to be familiar. And for those who haven't, this might seem like a lot of information at once, and it might seem a little bit overwhelming, but it gets easier once you're familiar with it. On the day of the competition, the weekend of the competition, you'll be working with a pretty large team who can help you with any issues you might experience on that day. And we've tried to make everything as clear and easy as possible so that officials can focus on the competition and not on technical issues. So, change my slide, there we go. So we've set up a dedicated competition page. It's available on onweightlifting.ca. The link is here. You can also access it via the homepage, and I'll take you there now. This is where you will find all links, schedules, start lists, documents, everything that you will need as a technical official, as well as athletes and coaches. Everything can be accessed here. So we have the Zoom links for tonight, the final schedule and start list to be confirmed after the verification meeting. These will be the links that you'll use on the day of the competition to access the weigh-in room and the competition platform. There's a scoreboard link for coaches. Your technical official schedule is here. There's a guide. I just need to update a couple things, but this should be ready for review soon. Session start lists, weigh-in officials will use this. I'll talk a little bit about that later in the meeting. Live stream links, competition regulations, everything you'll possibly need is on this page so that you don't need to be searching through emails trying to find the right link on the day of the competition. Let's try, there we go. I'll also try to add links directly to the technical official schedule itself so that when you're searching through the schedule, all you need to do is find your name, find the session that you're working, and then you should be able to click the link that is relevant to that position. And that page would also be available directly through that schedule will also be available directly through the homepage. So what will you need for this competition? A laptop or a PC. A second monitor is a good idea, especially for marshal, speaker, and weigh-in. So one screen would display the competition platform and the scoreboard through Zoom, and the other will display the OWL CMS system where you'll enter weight changes, start and stop the clock. And if you're doing weigh-ins, you'll enter body weights and openers. So it's nice to have those two things separate so that you're not having to flick back and forth between browsers. So a second monitor or a second laptop is ideal. If you're working as a referee, it's recommended that you have a smartphone handy for your red and white buttons. You could also use a browser for this actually, but the phone is a little bit easier to use while you're watching the competition. And it's more similar to the physical buttons that you would use in a competition. A good pair of quality headphones is a good idea, especially one with a microphone if you're a speaker. And then all officials should download the Zoom application before the competition. Just saves you a little bit of time. The link is right here. If you can, it's recommended that you hardwire your internet connection, as Wi-Fi can be temperamental. It's not quite so much of an issue for officials as it is for athletes, but it's still a good idea. Eventually, we are going to password protect OWL CMS. So you will have a password provided to you sometime in the next week before the competition that you'll use to log into any of these official positions to have access to the system. So this competition is going to run essentially exactly the same as an IWF competition with just a couple small differences. So as usual, each session begins with weigh-in 2 hours before competition start. It lasts an hour. Announcements will take place 10 minutes prior to the start time, and the first lift will happen at the start time of the competition. During that 10-minute break, the Zoom control will check athlete platforms, check TO microphones and equipment, and then make sure that all TOs are in their correct positions. And then the competition starts with the first lift. For weigh-ins, please sign in if you're a weigh-in official at least 15 minutes before the start time. I will be working Zoom control the whole weekend, so I will have the weigh-in meeting open, but I won't be present during weigh-ins. So I'll try to assign one official host privileges at the start of the meeting so that athletes can be admitted into the meeting by that official according to the start list. And then officials will work in pairs during the weigh-in. So one official can verbally confirm the athlete body weight and openers, and then the other one can enter that data into OWL CMS and then print the start list. And then the start list should be saved as a PDF and uploaded to a shared drive, which is available on the competition page. And I'll show all this process later in the meeting, so don't worry too much about that right now. So weigh-ins, the 20 kilo rule is in effect for this competition. So opening attempts have to total within 20 kilos of their entry total. The OWL CMS system will flag this automatically if starting attempts don't meet this requirement, so you don't need to necessarily keep track of what the athlete needs to total. It'll do that for you. It is very, very important that athletes wear a singlet during the weigh-in. There can be no exceptions to this rule. We ran a qualifier back in March, and we had athletes trying to weigh in compression shorts or sports bras, etc., and this is not acceptable. So all athletes must be fully covered in a singlet for the duration of their weigh-ins. They cannot undress. To allow for this singlet, a 300-gram allowance is provided, so athletes can weigh in up to 0.3 kilos over their weight class limit to account for the fact that they're wearing a singlet. When you go to enter this data into the system, you won't account for that unless the athlete is overweight. So if the athlete weighs in, for example, we have our 55 kilo lifter. If they weigh in at 55.3, you'll mark their weight as 55.0. If they weighed in at 54.5, then you just mark their weight as 54.5. Keep it as simple as possible. The 0.3 kilo allowance is only in the case if the athlete weighs over. And then a reminder that athletes that do not make weight for this competition cannot compete, and they need to make any body weight class changes at the final verification meeting and no later. So the weigh-in procedure is pretty simple. The athletes will be admitted into the call one at a time by officials. You'll see the waiting room pop up as athletes join in. They'll be put in a waiting room until their time is called. The official will allow them in one at a time. It's important that for athletes that their Zoom name is their actual name or their club name so that officials know who they are to allow them into the meeting. So I'll mention that to athletes in the athletes meeting tonight. Officials will confirm the ID of the athlete. They need government issued photo ID, license, passport, health card, etc. Then the athlete is going to calibrate their scale. So they'll take a single plate, either 20 kilos or 25 kilos. They'll show you the scale on the screen set to 0. Then they'll show them placing the plate on the scale. And then they'll show the scale again, displaying the weight within 0.3 kilos. So this is also the allowance for their plate calibration. Once that's good, the athlete can weigh in. So same process, they'll show the scale set to 0. Then they'll get a friend to hold their camera, or they'll prop it up on something. The athlete will stay in frame as they step onto the scale, and then they'll show you the scale displaying the weight, again within 0.3 kilos of their weight class for the singlet. Then the athlete will declare their openers to you verbally, and then they'll also enter them into the chat box set to everyone so that it can be clearly seen. There's no question what their openers will be. And then the official will verbally confirm the body weight and openers of the athlete back to them. So-and-so, 55.3 kilos, 55 kilo snatch, 65 kilo clean and jerk. Athlete will confirm, and then that data gets entered into the system. Just a couple additional notes. If the athlete is lifting with black plates, they need to verify that weight. They need to verify the weight of the plates at the weigh-in. I'll talk a little bit more about this later. And if you have multiple athletes from the same gym weighing in for the same session, it's not necessary to calibrate the scale multiple times. This is up to the discretion of the official as to whether they feel that needs to be done again. But sometimes you'll have 1 or 2 athletes, well, 2 or 3 athletes from the same club, and they're using the same scale that you just saw a few weigh-ins previous. If you feel like nothing has really changed in a few weigh-ins, then it's fine to skip that step. It's also a good idea to remind athletes to sign into the competition link 30 minutes prior to session start time at weigh-ins. Competition platform. So everybody, officials and athletes, should sign into the competition platform Zoom 30 minutes before start time. This will be a separate link, different from the weigh-ins. Officials, athletes, and coaches for a later session will be placed in a waiting room and then admitted once the prior session ends, unless it's the first session. Again, athlete announcements begin 10 minutes before the session start. The Zoom control will adjust athlete platforms and check officials, and the announcer/timer is the one to start and stop break times and select the current session. In terms of bar loading, we want the bar to be loaded as closely to IWF standards as possible, but it's not required because we aren't requiring competition collars. They're preferred, but spring collars can be used. They just don't count towards the weight of the bar. So just like IWF, heaviest plates should be loaded inside. Same thing goes with the change plates. Before each lift, the athlete or coach is going to turn the bar 45 degrees to the camera so that the weight on the bar can be verified. The announcer will verify the bar and signal to the athlete that the verification is complete. The referees should also be on the lookout for correct loading, and they can flag the announcer to pause the clock if they notice an error. So it's going to be the announcer and the referees working together to verify the weight on the bar. It's important for the role of announcer that the athlete does not lift before the bar is verified. So the announcer will see the athlete in view, let the athlete know that they are correctly selected, verify their bar, and then clock begins. Athlete can lift. So all the weight used has to be in kilos, including the change plates. The only exception is spring collars, which won't be weighed. Colored bumper plates are also not a requirement, but if an athlete does use black bumper plates, then they have to verify the weight of those bumper plates at the weigh-ins and then tape them accordingly. So if an athlete is using black bumper plates, they won't be black bumper plates by the time they get to the competition platform. They should all be taped and colored for easy verification. And then in the competition, athletes are not given extra time to load the bar. This is one of the things that differs from a standard IWF competition. The clock begins immediately after the weight is verified. So it's the athlete's responsibility to make sure that their bar is correct by the time they're called. And in the case of a 2-minute clock where an athlete is following themselves, they're not given additional time to load the bar either. So the clock will begin as soon as the athlete is called for their attempt and their screen is in view. The clock will pause for an athlete to declare their change, and as the marshal enters that change, but once that change has been made, the clock resumes. Okay. Announcer / speaker / timer. So the speaker will call on the current athlete, which is then selected by the Zoom control. Once that screen has been selected, the speaker will declare athlete is in view, athlète en vue. Then we'll ensure that the bar is turned 45 degrees to the camera before the lift to verify the weight. They'll give an all clear for the athlete to begin before starting the clock. Again, referees should work with the speaker to double check the weight on the bar. Verification is extra important for this meet because competition voting is not required. The marshal will be monitoring the chat box for weight changes. So athletes or coaches will enter their new attempts or their weight changes into the chat box set to everyone. That's important. If they direct message you and you lose connection as a marshal, there's no record that those weight changes were made. So it's important that they set the chat box to everyone. In terms of formatting, it's easiest to keep it consistent. So either last name declares X kilos or athlete number declares X kilos. Makes it easier for the marshal. The usual time requirements apply, so the marshal needs to keep an eye on the clock since the first change needs to be made within 30 seconds. And then the marshal should not have the change screen open on OWL-CMS until the change comes in. I'll explain more on this in a minute. That's just to stop sometimes the system gets kind of buggy if you have the screen waiting for a change to come in. Referees are going to use your remote referee buttons, ideally on a smartphone. You're going to make sure that the referee number on your screen matches your assigned referee number. Again, more on this in a second. And then just to note that no down signal will be given for athletes. So athletes need to show full control of the bar before they drop it. And it's at the athlete's discretion to decide whether or not they think that lift is complete and ready to be put down. But it's the referee's discretion as to whether that actually happened. And you can still red light an athlete that didn't show control, even though they didn't get a down signal. So before we get into, I was just going to cover technical issues, but before we get into that, I'm just going to go back and run through this process on the OWL-CMS system. So again, this will be password protected on the day, so this will prompt you to log in with a password. So this system should be very familiar to all of you, although I'm sure for some of you it's been a year and a half since you've used it. So I'll just go through it again. You're going to run lifting group. This is where you'll access the weigh-in, announcer, and marshal screens. When you're a weigh-in official, you'll set up a test session here. You'll select the appropriate group. We have 3 athletes in this.
Amanda, I'm not sure we're seeing, I'm not sure you're showing your screen.
Oh, okay, hang on.
And also, the two glitches you mentioned have been fixed.
Oh, okay.
So the marshal, the attempt will be denied if the timing is not correct. So the marshal should pay attention, but the system will block it. Perfect. And the bit about the lifter card has been fixed, but it's a good practice anyway.
Okay, excellent. That's less work for us then. Okay,
yeah, so just share your screen again.
Yeah, okay. This is good? If everybody can see this, you should.
Yeah, that's better now. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So this is the OWL CMS system that you've all used before. This is where you'll access under Run Lifting Group. This is where you'll access the weigh-in, announcer screen, marshal screen. When you're entering your weigh-ins, you'll select the appropriate group to weigh in. And then this is, for example, if this athlete's entered 215 for her entry total and she enters 60, 70, it'll flag that it is missing the required kilos to meet the entry total. So once that's entered, oh my gosh, 115 should be good. So you'll update. Then you're going to generate start numbers, download your starting weight sheet. And then, don't know if you'll be able to see this. I don't know if you can see the Excel sheet. It'll open an Excel sheet. It's preferable if you save it as a PDF. Let's do that really quickly. Oh gosh, okay. Imagine that I saved it as a PDF. And then you're going to go to the shared drive, which is available through a link on the website. And this is where you'll access all the folders for every session. So if this was information session F8, then I'm going to upload my start list, which I saved as a PDF. So the athletes can access this start list. And then everything is populated. This is an important step because if you forget this, then athletes and coaches don't have anything to time those. But it's pretty easy once you've done it a couple times. So that's it for weigh-ins. Once you have that info in, the announcer will select the current session. Up here, F8, these athletes have weighed in. That's when the announcer will start the countdown to intro. 10 minutes to intro, the clock begins, and you can see it start to count down. When that 10 minutes is up, you'll end the break, and then the competition has started. So announcer is also timer. Athlete is in view, Rachel Siemens, 85 kilos has been verified on the bar. You can see her bar turn 45 degrees to the camera. Referees and announcers agree it's good. Bar is returned to center. Clock begins for Rachel Siemens, 85 kilos. Referees say it's a good lift. I'll show that in a second. And then the marshal can enter the change. At that point, this goes to Nadia. Nadia is going to move up. This was the screen where I had mentioned earlier, make sure that this isn't open and waiting until the change comes in. So if you knew that Nadia was going to go up to 85, normally it'll mess things up if you have this waiting for the change, but apparently that's all good now. So it's probably good practice just to wait anyway in case an athlete makes a last minute change in the chat box. So same thing as usual, select athlete, athlete goes moving up to 88, and so it goes back to Rachel. Pretty simple. The referees, this is what you'll see on your smartphone. This is the link that will have either 1, 2, or 3 directly available to you. Just make sure that this number up here matches the referee assignment that you've been given. And then you'll be able to just physically click on good lift, no lift for each lift. And then this screen will refresh automatically as each attempt goes. And so that's it. That's pretty simple. I'm going to go back to the PowerPoint. I can go over that again in the next meeting, just so everybody's really familiar with it. In terms of technical issues, athletes that lag, or if an athlete loses connection mid-lift, they can't be credited for their attempt. So unfortunately for them, they just lose that lift if it can't be clearly seen by referees. So it's up to the athlete, again, to make sure their connection is as secure and hardwired as possible. if an athlete's on Wi-Fi or data, sometimes it gets a little bit slow, but it's up to them to make sure that it's as clear as possible. And no additional time will be permitted for technical issues outside of like really wild cases where we would have a technical stop and discuss. In terms of technical officials, if you're having technical issues, if you lose connection or the link isn't working or something, you never really know what's going to happen. Every session has a backup official listed. These backup officials should be in the session. So if you're a backup official on the schedule, please sign into the competition platform, or yeah, there's supposed to be a competition platform for backups. Please sign in and just be watching the competition. Try not to step away for too long in case something comes up and we need you to step into marshal or referee. And you'll be called on by Zoom control if needed. If you're running into any other technical issues, just go ahead and flag either Zoom control or it'll be me or Mike, basically, in the chat, and let us know that you're having issues, and then we can make that switch for officials.
How do we contact Zoom control?
Just through the chat.
Or just through the chat? Okay.
Yep. So you'll have the chat box. Oh, well, you don't have to have the chat box open unless you're marshal. But if you need any assistance, the chat box is the easiest way to reach me since I'll be on Zoom all day. I can also give my cell phone number to anyone. For example, if you were driving and you weren't going to make it at all to the call and there's no way for you to signal to me in the chat box, that way you could text me and I could make the change before the session begins. That's probably easiest.
Okay, no, it's just I'm going to be marshal one, and I know with the AWA, they come in fast and furious.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, they come in real quick. Yeah, marshal has to be paying attention for sure to that chat box. Just some final Zoom reminders. Please make sure that all your equipment is fully charged or plugged in so that nothing dies before the event or in the middle of the event. All officials should be on mute except for the speaker, or in the event that an error is noticed regarding current lifter athlete. So come off mute if you see something that the announcer didn't catch in terms of bar verification. Otherwise, please enter any questions or issues into the chat. And then if you have to step away for any length of time, please message Mike or I in the chat and we can replace you temporarily or fill in for you temporarily.
Amanda,
yep.
For the marshal, it's a very good idea to confirm every change that you make so that the coaches know that it's been done. And it also paces the speed at which the changes are made. Like if there are 5 changes to be made, you go through the 5 changes and you confirm each one. You've stopped the time anyway. Well, if necessary, of course.
Yeah, that's a good idea. So yeah, I'll add that in and mention it in the next meeting as well. That if marshal is receiving changes in the chat box, it's good practice to confirm them as they come in for athletes so that they know their change has been made. And because exactly like you said, Jean-Francois, that 5 changes come in, it might take a minute or so to make all of those changes. And the athlete who made the 5th change is just waiting to see if their change has been made and doesn't know if it's been received yet.
So what's really important is to catch it. If the time is running for an athlete, the marshal needs to pay attention in order to stop the time for that athlete and then sort things out.
Okay, so should we be pausing the clock as any change comes in?
No,
just
the change is for
that
the athlete that's running.
Yep.
So if it's Marie Tremblay that's on deck, her time is running and there's the 3rd change is for her, then someone should stop the time so that we can sort things out.
Yep, agreed. That makes sense. Be careful what you say. The event will be live streamed. Actually, so the live stream won't pick up any of the Zoom sound. The live stream is going to be running commentators throughout the weekend, with the exception of the Friday sessions. But it's still a good practice to be careful what you say, even as a joke, because everything is usually archived somewhere. And there are no uniform requirements for this event. Just wear something comfortable and stay hydrated. And I think that's it for me. Are there any questions, additional questions, or things I'm forgetting?
Hi, Amanda, it's Jocelyn. This is my first time ever doing a Zoom, and I'm still not quite sure how we do the red and green lights. Like, do I have to have my phone set up like my computer, like in the Zoom part? And then how do I get that red and green light on my phone?
Right, so what you'll do is you'll have the Zoom running on your computer, and then you'll open the referee link on your phone directly. You'll just click the link. It will open directly on your phone in your phone's browser, just as it would here. Hang on, I'm going to share my screen again.
Oh, so I don't have to have anything set up on my phone? Well,
nope.
How will it? I don't understand how that works, but
it just opens in a browser, so it works directly.
Oh, on phone in a browser. Okay.
Yep. So just like here. So just as in this whole system is not a separate system, it's open directly in a browser. I'm going to click referee buttons. You won't need to go through that system here. You'll just click the link, this link, csc2021.owenweightlifting.ca/ref number 1. You'll have that link available. If you're ref number 1, you'll get this link. So for example, I'll copy it, I'll open a new browser, paste that link directly into the browser. It takes me directly to the referee buttons on your phone. So you'll just open Google on your phone. If it's stressing you out, then it's totally fine just to have this link as a browser as it is right here. Like I could be referee with this screen on a browser and have a Zoom meeting on a separate screen, or even on the same screen. Well, no, you couldn't have it on the same screen because then you couldn't press the referee buttons at the same time as watching the Zoom. But then you'll just click on this.
Okay.
Red or white.
I think you have some questions in the chat.
Oh, yes, I do. Lana, if the marshal needs to confirm that the change has been made, should we do it verbally or via chat? I think chat. So
Hi,
for
Amanda. Yeah, I was just gonna comment because obviously the chat might be, because I'm marshalling for one of the sessions and it seems like it's a pretty big session. So I'm thinking the chat is going to be quite busy.
Mm-hmm.
So would it be better to confirm that, oh, so-and-so athlete, the change has been made verbally so we can just do it quickly, or do we enter everything in chat so everything is recorded?
I don't think verbally makes sense, as the speaker will be speaking during the competition, or there'll be an athlete on the platform. So for example, in the chat box right now, if I was lifter number 3, declares 70 kilos, then the marshal would just say 3 confirmed. We can play around with that idea. As long as it's clear that that lift has been, you could even shorten it somehow.
Gotcha. Okay, that's fine.
France Boucher, I don't know if Joni, you want to take this one. In terms of the time, timer is controlled by announcer.
France, est-ce que vous avez compris ou vous voulez que je vous explique en français?
Okay. Yeah, so the announcer will be watching the Zoom screen and then starting and stopping the clock as they see the bar come off the platform.
Okay, so if you're the marshal and you're making a change for an athlete that's already on the platform, you have to talk to the announcer, send off an email to everyone indicating to stop, or through the chat, to stop the clock to make the change for the athlete.
The marshal can stop the clock. There is a button at the top to stop the clock. The marshal can stop it immediately. If you're very quick and you enter the change as the marshal, it would stop the clock anyway. So you can stop the clock as the marshal by using the pause button at the top, then enter the change and confirm in the chat.
Yeah,
Okay.
I've never done that as marshal, actually. Like, if you enter the change, say if Rachel is the current lifter and this is the automatic increase, she just snatched 85, and now her clock is running on 86, but she just declared 90. You can just enter that in the chat, and as long as she isn't close to that 30 seconds, which we've said will flag it anyway. Like, if they're close and they just got that change in, then yeah, pause the clock right up here. But is this Margot?
Yeah.
Yeah, Margot. So you don't need to. You just basically want to confirm in the chat that change has been received. Just mostly for your records and for the athletes' records, right? So that you don't lose track of the changes that are coming in. But other than that, you don't need to communicate with the announcer at all, because the system will do that for you. So
Okay.
all the changes that you make here on your screen will be reflected in what the announcer sees. So a second ago it said Rachel Siemens up here, and now it's automatically repopulated with Nadia, first attempt, 88 kilos.
Yeah,
If the current lifter is changed, the announcer actually gets a yellow warning telling him that a change has occurred for the current athlete.
Yeah.
So there's no need to talk to the announcer.
Okay, I get that. It's, my concern is them coming in quite quickly and not being able to type as fast and let them know that the change has been done in 30 seconds or less.
Right. So in that case, I would say make the change in the system first, and then go back and confirm the changes.
Oh. Okay.
I don't know. That might be kind of confusing. I can see where that is helpful for if there are a lot of changes coming in, but you can always scroll up in the chat to make sure you didn't miss anything. I don't know. It's a
it's I've never done it. My husband has done it once. Well, of course, he passed away, so he was also my IT guy. So this is my first one on my own.
It's a very simple system. Once you get those first couple changes in, it won't be a problem. Maybe we can set something up where we practice this before the competition, but you'll be totally fine.
Oh, I'm sure I will be. Those are the issues that I can see right away. But
yeah, we'll maybe have to work out, like you can have the chat open on the same screen as your marshal screen. Like you could have both coming in at the same time. In theory, the marshal doesn't even really need to see the Zoom. Like you want to have it open, but all the information is coming in through the chat that you need in terms of changes, and then you're just going to be keeping track of those athletes' changes. Yep. And the announcer screen is updated automatically, so you don't need to communicate with the announcer at all.
Yeah, I'm sure once I get into it, it'll be good.
Yeah, the Friday sessions, because they'll be streamed, but we're not doing the commentating and stuff. It'll be a little bit easier to kind of ease into this. Are there any additional questions? Did I miss anything?
Hey, Amanda.
Yeah.
I just have a couple of questions. So I know I saw in the document, you may have mentioned this earlier, but I got in late. You mentioned that for Marshall, it's best to have two computers or laptops open. Again, because I'm marshalling, what would you suggest? So one of the laptop, I would just have like where you can change the weight, and then the other laptop would be just, I guess, monitoring the chat. Is that what you mean by having two monitors?
Yeah, so one screen would be running the Zoom, just have the Zoom window open constantly with the chat box open. And then the second screen would be Marshall screen where you're entering your changes. So you just watch the chat box, changes come in, make those changes, enter.
If you have a big enough screen, you can have the two side by side. It would work. It's just a matter of being comfortable seeing both at the same time.
Mhm.
Right. I just don't have a big enough screen, and I think it would just be easier if I have my two laptops open. And my next question is, because I haven't done it in a long time, just as a refresher, if an athlete decides to, let's say they make their first lift, and for the second and the third, they decide to withdraw, if I'm clicking on the athlete, if you don't mind clicking for me, I just have to enter minus on the weight lifted, correct? And then it would take them out if they're not attempting any lifts.
There is a withdraw button at the bottom left.
That withdraw. Okay. So if they're in the snatch portion and then let's say they make their first lift and I click withdraw, it will just automatically take them out for the second and third, correct?
If you withdraw from both lifts.
Oh, from both. But if, let's say, like they made
decline.
The first match, yeah, and then they decline the second and the third. Not that it's going to happen. Then do I just minus, or because
you put 0 on the weight lifted.
Oh, on the weight lifted, put 0. Okay.
At the bottom line, yeah.
Oh, okay, I see.
So let's say if they made 90. Let's say they made 90 there.
It's not letting me enter that.
Look at the bottom.
Yeah.
You have edit lift results.
Oh, you want me to click on this?
Yeah.
Oh, I see. Got it.
You can. The reason for that is many marshals under stress were typing in the wrong box. So people asked me to block it by default. So that's why it's that way.
Okay.
What about the case of an athlete, say, for example, she snatched 90 and she made 90, but then she didn't want to take her second or third attempts, but then she does want to continue in clean and jerk.
Then you would enter you would do, nothing prevents you. She will be called on the clean and jerk because there's a declaration for the first
0-0.
Yeah, that's good. That's all.
Okay.
Okay, so then we do have to click on the edit button.
Yeah,
for the special case of I'm withdrawing from snatch, but I will come back. So if you decline a lift, you basically put a 0 at the bottom.
Right. Okay.
And does that include, we've had an athlete who completed 3 snatches and 1 clean and jerk, and they were satisfied with that total, and they didn't want to continue. We clicked withdraw.
That's withdraw.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if they already have a total, they can withdraw.
Yes.
And you don't have to enter manually 0-0.
Right.
Okay.
Right. And likewise, because I think this happened in, I can't remember the previous competition, if somebody lifted, and I think because, I don't know, there was a lag or something, they were credited with a lift that they didn't do, and then the next lifter was like, a different number. We can just, let's say, can you just click on Natty or something?
Yeah.
If let's say this athlete was credited with 90, but technically it was 87, we can just go ahead and let's say go on change 2 and then just manually correct that, right?
Exactly. That's
right.
The point.
And then, right. Okay. Got it. Thank you.
Yeah, if something messes up, you basically need to make the athlete's card right and everything will right itself again.
Great. Thank you.
So if the athlete card is faithful to what is supposed to be there, the system will recompute everything and you'll be back on track.
Thank you.
Yeah. I think that's where the weight verification becomes important, because then you don't have the case of an athlete lifting a heavier weight when the previous one wasn't complete. So as long as we're verifying that the weight that's called is the weight that's on the bar and that the marshal hasn't missed a change or something. Those are rare cases, but still good to know. Are there any other questions regarding the system? Again, we can cover this in the next meeting next Thursday so that everybody's comfortable with it. If there are no additional questions, then
if we could have a practice session, that would be great.
Yeah, no, I want everybody to be as comfortable as they can possibly be, because I'm going to be Zoom control on the competition, but I won't necessarily be able to help out that much. I mean, I'll do it what I can, but the more comfortable you are with the system, then the smoother everything's going to run.
Yeah, because I would hate to mess up an athlete.
Yep, we can definitely try that. I'll set up a meeting for next week. Okay, thanks everybody. If there are no, I'm just going to switch back to the PowerPoint for a second. If there are no additional questions, then I will see you next week at our next information meeting, July 8th, 7 p.m.